Welcome to Journey Through Sci-Fi. My name is James.
My name is Matt.
And in today's episode, we are saving the planet.
Woo!
Yeah, we've got to save the planet in today's episode. So it's episode number 7 of our space series. The films we are looking at in today's episode are Sunshine from 2007, directed by Danny Boyle. And what's the second one we're looking at, Matt?
The second film is called The Wandering Earth, which came out last year, 2019, directed by Frank Guo, I think is how you say that name. Is that right? That's the big blockbuster Chinese sci-fi movie.
Yeah. So had you seen these films before?
I've seen Sunshine a couple of times, I think, but not for a while. And I'd not seen The Wandering Earth. I know it was kind of a big deal when it came out last year. Had you seen these?
I hadn't seen The Wandering Earth, but I sort of heard about the hype. There was a lot of sort of lead up to the release, and it did really well.
Really well. Have you seen the box office numbers?
Yeah, we'll go into that a little bit later when we chat about that. But these are both films where there are people going into space to save the planet.
Yeah, from the sun.
Yeah, the sun is the main villain in both of these films.
Yeah.
So shall we get going?
Yeah.
Our sun is dying. Mankind faces extinction. 16 months ago, I, Robert Capa, and a crew of 7 left Earth frozen in a solar winter. Our mission, reignite the sun before it's too late. Welcome to Icarus 2.
Yeah, Sunshine by Danny Boyle. I love this film. I love Danny Boyle. How many of his films have you seen?
I think I've seen the majority of them. So he's done Trainspotting, obviously.
Yeah, and the sequel, which is one of the best sequels ever made, in my opinion.
I don't think I've seen the sequel yet.
It's very good.
Okay,
Yeah,
I have to look that one up.
He did Shallow Grave, which is quite similar to Sunshine, but also sets a bit of a tone for his style of movie making. He is all about like permanently escalating tension. Is kind of what I see across all of his films. They all build up to this incredibly tense climax, and he does that in different ways. Like this one and Shallow Grave have the same kind of like violent ending that it's building up to, but he's got just a really good way of building tension even when there's not necessarily violence. Have you ever seen Millions?
No, I haven't seen Millions. What happens in that one?
Millions is basically a kids movie about it's set in a world where Britain's going to change to the euro imminently, and a young boy finds like £200,000 or something by the side of a train track, and it's going to be, it's the currency's going to be put out of circulation soon. It's kind of like an easy win, but it turns out to be proceeds of crime, and then the gang who it belongs to kind of track them down, and it's really tense, but it is essentially a family movie. No one's going to get killed in it, but with that crime gang kind of closing in on the family and all of that. It's been a while since I've seen it, but it had the same sort of sense of tension building up. So this
is something that Danny Boyle was like consistently doing with his films, building up that tension.
I think so, or at least he's very good at doing that, and it's very much his wheelhouse.
Yeah, because the closest thing to sort of like other sci-fi films he's done is 28 Days Later, isn't it?
Yeah, which is, again, it's got that same sense of building up to a really violent conclusion. Have you seen Shallow Grave as well?
I haven't seen Shallow Grave. It's one of those ones I've got on DVD, and I've had it for ages and been meaning to watch it, but I just haven't got around to it yet.
I'd recommend all of his films, but yeah, if you've got it, check it out. But those 28 Days Later does it as well, where there's a character kind of stalking other characters, and there's a looming threat, and the tension of that stalking around, are they going to get them, kind of serial killer-y vibe, is one of his... it's one of the tools up Danny Boyle's sleeve, I think, to get to that real tense ending of a film.
Yeah, because that comes from Alex Garland as well to a degree, because he's written quite a few of the stuff that Danny Boyle's gone on and directed.
Yeah.
So what has Alex Garland's involvement been? So he did The Beach? Is that
Yeah,
right?
was that the first time they worked together?
I'm not
that
sure.
Because he wrote 28 Days Later, I think, didn't he?
Yeah, 28 Days Later,
I
definitely.
can't remember which one. I think The Beach came out first. Because The Beach is based on Garland's novel. And then he became like a scriptwriter, colleague, I guess, of Danny Boyle. Because they've worked together a few times.
Yeah, and I think obviously Garland's got more of a he's got more of a sci-fi element to it, the stuff that he writes, nowadays anyway. Because if you look at Annihilation, Ex Machina, all the stuff he's gone and directed since have all been big sci-fi films.
Yeah, Danny Boyle's sadly not really gone back to the sci-fi well.
Yeah, I
Which
think
is a shame.
this film really took a lot out of him.
Yeah.
So, yeah, he kind of sort of wanted to put a pin in it after this, because we'll talk a little bit about sort of the lead up to it and all the stuff that went into making the film. But I think it did take a lot out of Danny Boyle. So putting that much of yourself into a film like this, and I'm guessing all the research must have been a bit crazy.
Yeah, they worked with... Brian Cox was heavily involved in this, wasn't he?
Yeah.
And would this be before Brian Cox got really famous? Or was he doing his BBC series? When was this?
It was in the midst of it.
Right. So when he was kind of... when his star was rising. If you pardon the pun. Oh, that was lame.
I enjoyed that, though.
But yeah, they consulted him on it, didn't they? And
Yeah.
Cillian Murphy kind of picked up kind of stole his mannerisms. Is that
Yeah,
right?
I loved that he did that as well.
Yeah.
Because he like, how can I be a top physicist? What do I have to do? So he just looked at Brian Cox and just basically copied all of his mannerisms.
Yeah, well, fine, yeah.
It works.
Yeah, it's the simplest approach to it.
Exactly.
You couldn't really... I don't know if you could get away with that now. I don't know. Brian Cox is really famous. You can't just go and do like a bit of... Be the physicist and do a bit of a Brian Cox pastiche. But Cillian Murphy's a very good actor.
Yeah. And obviously, like you said, because it's like the height of sort of Brian Cox popularity,
Yeah.
it's more sort of in the public mindset, this idea of what a physicist is like.
I guess so, yeah.
Yeah.
So he's kind of the main character in the film, isn't he? Cillian Murphy playing Kappa?
Kappa.
Yeah, based on Brian Cox. And he's the... like you said, he's the main physicist. He's the one who's got the kind of... It's a bit weird because the mission... he's the only person... And he's treated like this vital component of the mission by everyone else. And that's kind of a key part of the plot. Did you find that a bit strange that this one guy was like the mission would collapse without him?
Yeah, a little bit, because there's no backup, is there?
No.
But that's something that happens on space missions all the time. What we've watched so far, there's never a backup personnel member in case one of them's ill or something like that.
Kind of feels like there should have been on this one because... So the plot is that we're on mission 2. We've already had an attempt to save the world. The sun is expanding. Is that it, or is that the Wandering Earth?
That's the Wandering
The
Earth,
sun's
I think.
dying.
The sun's dying,
And it's all cold and grey on Earth in
Yeah.
sunshine. So they're going up there to just bomb the sun, right? That's the plot.
Yeah, because it's like a solar winter. They keep calling it, don't they?
Oh, that's cool.
The climate on the Earth is getting colder and colder. So you're getting this sort of second ice age coming around, almost, from the looks of it. And you don't see this until towards the end of the film, anything about Earth. It's all just set on this spaceship.
Oh, yeah, you don't actually see Earth, do you?
No, but they mention it and they talk about this
Yeah.
solar winter and all this kind of stuff. So there's all this sort of lead in before. But the ship's called the Icarus as well.
The Icarus 2.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which I enjoyed.
Yeah,
Because
yeah,
of the story of Icarus, who flew too close to the sun.
Yeah.
Because he'd made wings, hadn't he? Icarus.
He made wings out of... no, his father made the wings, I think.
And he said, don't fly too close to the sun.
Don't you go up there, you
Don't
little
you
rascal.
do it.
And then he did do that, and the wings burn and he falls and
Yeah.
dies. Yeah.
So that's a great name to name your spaceship.
It is. It's a bit like calling a boat the Titanic now,
Yeah.
isn't it? Like, it's a bad idea.
But that is what they want to do, though, don't they? They want to fall into the sun.
Yeah.
Well, they want to drop something off in the sun.
Yeah. The plan is... It's not a suicide run, is it? There is the intention to come back safely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because that's why... So right at the beginning, they're getting close to the sun and they hit a blind spot where there's no... they can't send communications anymore.
Yeah, but it's planned. It's part of the mission.
So they knew it was going to happen, but then they send their messages back with the intention of coming back to Earth after the mission's complete.
Yeah. But it's Icarus 2, because this mission has already happened once and just vanished without a trace, which is kind of why I thought it was so weird that there's only one physicist on board who is capable of launching the bomb, I guess, is what his role is at the end of the mission. Supposedly this massive nuclear bomb's going to just cause a massive nuclear explosion inside the sun that's going to
reignite it, yeah. Because he goes on about creating a star inside of a star.
Yeah.
So that's the intention with this scientific missile thing that he's going to fire into the sun.
Yeah. But it's already gone wrong once. And they're only sending one physicist. I don't know. It just kind of bothered me a little bit. Like, you wouldn't...
But then there's the thing, they only have a certain amount of oxygen, but that happens later.
Yeah. No, to start the mission, I think they're good for oxygen because they're producing their own oxygen.
Yeah.
Aren't they?
So they've got these gardens, haven't they? Or they've got one garden on the ship. So they're producing all the oxygen themselves. It's very sort of silent running. And then later on, that garden goes up in flames from a malfunction. So they lose that oxygen, that precious oxygen that's keeping them up there. And I quite like the idea of them having a garden there to keep creating this oxygen, keep doing this sort of like airflow.
Yeah.
Because it makes sense, doesn't it?
Yeah, and they're growing vegetables there as well, aren't they? Is it the same garden or are they growing veg in a separate garden?
I think it must be the same garden.
Yeah, Michelle Yeoh's tending to some carrots at one point, isn't she?
Yeah.
It was a cool like element of the ship. Like, what did you think of the overall design of the ship? You just mentioned silent running a little bit. Is it similar, or what do you think of it?
Well, it's got this. So the ship itself has this big solar shield, and they make a big thing out of that, and it looks so impressive.
Yeah.
So it's a big round circular shield across this traditional-looking kind of space station.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, traditional in what sense? It's very spindly.
It's what I've come to imagine from like space films.
Right. From but more modern, realistic space stations.
Yeah.
Because it's not like a rocket ship. You know, it's not like a space shuttle.
No, it's more like a space station.
Yeah.
It's got the rotating parts to keep the gravity going and all that kind of stuff. But it's this massive solar shield which really fascinated me because it's so big, and there's certain shots throughout the film where it's just reflecting the sun, and it looks like a sun itself.
Yeah.
And it's all this cool stuff they've done with it there.
Yeah, it's one of the defining visual features of the film, isn't it? They do a really good job of capturing a sense of just blinding brightness, which is a huge part of what the film is about. It's all about looking directly into the sun and what goes through your mind when you're doing that, and what would go through your mind if you were doing it from closer than anyone's ever done before. And people kind of like lose it, basically.
Yeah, that's a really nice aspect of the film as well. I really enjoyed all that sort of... Yeah, because you are flying too close to the sun. What's it doing to you in sort of like other levels? Like, what's it doing to your mind?
Yeah, so I guess comparing it to other films, space is being kind of used as a place that's so unnatural, like the human brain just can't really deal with it. A bit like Event Horizon, and it has some other similarities later on as well. But in a much more like visually surreal, bit trippy, kind of really sort of visually pleasing way, you know?
Yeah.
So it kind of starts with that element of it, doesn't it? We get a little bit of narrative, introducing a little bit of exposition from the captain, and then it cuts to the psych officer, who he's just sitting there in a room that is singularly designed to sit there and stare at the sun. It's a really weird concept, isn't it? You just sit in this room, there's like a filter screen that you can adjust, and then all you do is sit there and stare directly at the sun. Like, there's no reason for that, is there, mission-wise?
Yeah, it's weird because I suppose it's their closest thing on the spaceship to being back home.
Well, no, because...
No, but I know what you're going to say.
Okay.
I know exactly what you're going to say because they've got the Earth rooms.
Yeah, later on we see that.
But they're not natural. This is the closest natural thing they have because the sun is like the giver of life to the Earth.
Yeah.
You get all of your like vitamin D and all this kind of stuff from the sun's rays, and being so close to it and seeing it, I think it's kind of that element to it as well. It's it's the closest real thing they've got, but they've got these Earth rooms as well, which are really fascinating.
Hang on, we'll come back to that though. Do we know in the film how long have the sort of ecological events been happening? How long has the sun been dimming? Is it a relatively recent thing in the film, or is it like decades?
I think it must have been a long lead up, because it wouldn't make sense for it just to be happening all of a sudden.
So I wonder if sitting there staring at the sun speaks to a sort of cultural shift on Earth, because, well, the sun's dwindling away, so our relationship to it in a cultural sense would have changed. And then to be able to sit there and enjoy the brightness of it, because that's what they're all about, isn't it?
Yeah.
They talk about it. The one, I think it's the psych officer, talks about it like it's like taking a shower in sunlight, and he compares it to, you can go out in space and it's complete darkness, and that's the absence of anything. This is the exact opposite. Like, it's pure energy. You're completely engulfed in something, as opposed to the vacuum of space. It's the exact opposite of that. So I wonder if it's, you could read into a bit of a cultural shift about how humans think about the sun and feel more passionately about it if they had been deprived of it for decades.
Yeah, that would make sense, definitely.
Yeah.
And he takes it to further and further extremes, doesn't he, throughout the film? So it starts, like, even when you first see him, he's looking out from this, like, observation deck, and then he turns it up and he says, like, how much percentage can I turn it up?
Yeah.
To the computer, because the Icarus has a computer, the Icarus.
Yep.
And so he goes to, like, what, 30% or like 3? It's
Oh,
not
no,
much,
it's
like 3%.
2 or 3.
Yeah.
He's at 2. He wants to go to 4, and the computer's like, absolutely not. You can go to 3.1 for 30 seconds or something like that.
So he puts on his sunglasses and does it.
Yeah.
And then later on, you see the burns that has caused.
Yeah, he's peeling later in the film.
Yeah.
He's just sitting there peeling like little strips off his forehead.
And it's all just from that one moment when he's in the observation deck.
Yeah.
And that 30 seconds has had such an impact on his skin.
Yeah.
And that kind of like, that helps the progression of the story as well and the plot, because it's this feeling of like coming apart.
Yeah, being like psychologically overpowered by and overwhelmed by the sheer magnitude of the thing that you're trying to process.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's done really well.
Yeah. And they're kind of drip feeding that, because that's really important for how the film ends, isn't it? And the kind of the main bad guy who shows up, we need to understand this. It is almost Lovecraftian, isn't it? Like Event Horizon.
Yeah,
like,
it is, isn't it?
just losing your mind at this cosmic thing that is just like, you can't comprehend it, and the closer you get to it, the more insane you're going to get. And you just get that drip feed of it from the guys who are becoming obsessed with the sunbathing room. Because he talks the captain into it as well, doesn't he? The captain starts going in there.
And he's having the same sort of experience, isn't he?
Yeah. And they're all having nightmares about like falling into the surface of the sun.
Yeah, it's not a very nice place to be from the looks of it.
Yeah.
Although they all seem to love it at the same time.
Yeah, again, and that's really important for what might become of these characters if they were to go the way of the Icarus One.
Icarus, how close is this to full brightness?
At this distance of 36 million miles, you are observing the sun at 2% of full brightness.
2%? Can you show me 4%?
4% would result in irreversible damage to your retinas.
And tensions are quite high. Like Chris Evans and Cillian Murphy get into like a fist fight over the use of the communication thing to send a message
That's like
home.
the first instance when you see them together, really.
Yeah.
And Chris Evans has ridiculous hair at the start.
Yeah, what's up with that? Because he shaves it after that scene,
Yeah.
and then why did he have that hair? It's a wig, presumably, right?
Yeah, I suppose it's just to show how long they've been on the ship, I'm guessing. Because in his sort of like passport photo, his ID,
Yeah.
he's got shaved head.
Yeah, he looks like he does when he's Johnny Storm. Is it Johnny Storm?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Who turns himself into fire? The Human Torch.
Oh, lovely.
There we go. What a nice little reference that is.
So, what goes wrong first in the mission for the Icarus 2? Yeah, spoilers, everything goes wrong.
Everything goes wrong. We're in space. Everything's going to fuck up.
Yeah. But what is the first thing? What's the trigger? Well, they get the distress call from the Icarus 1 and they have to make a decision whether or not they're going to go off course. And there's a whole debate about that and when they go off course. they fuck up the trajectory.
Yeah. So the first thing is they decide to go off course because they've got a distress signal from the Icarus one.
Yeah, but they have like a whole. They have a really good debate about whether they should or shouldn't.
Yeah.
And actually, Chris Evans, like he's introduced as this psycho hothead who's going to start a fight over sending a message home. But I don't know. What did you make of him? I thought he was very.
I thought everything that he did made sense.
Yeah.
And he's thinking of the bigger picture.
Yeah.
Because if this mission fails, then humanity's done for.
Yeah, and that's his point about Icarus 1. We should not go. There's a distress signal. No one knows what happened to it, but suddenly we're getting a distress signal. Should we go and have a look or whatever? And he is straight down the line from the get-go. You can't be serious. We're not doing that. And he's like explaining to them the importance of their own mission as if they don't know. Like he's assuming that they want to do a rescue mission. And he's like, no, their lives are expendable. Our lives are expendable. We need to just stay the course. The psych officer's point is, well, it's not all actually just about the rescue mission. They have another bomb. And we don't know for sure that our bomb's going to work. It's all theoretical. It makes sense for us to make a little detour. And we've got 2 attempts at our goal.
Yeah. Because it's Cillian Murphy's decision at the end that decides that, because he runs the program, doesn't he, to see how likely the percentage is for the bomb to work. And that's why later Chris Evans blames Cillian Murphy for all of the shit that happens.
Yeah, that's real. He's a real dick in that.
Yeah.
I wasn't very happy about that.
But yeah, you can see sort of like all of the characters in this have their motives, and they all realise the importance of the mission.
And they do decide to go off course. They change their course. They change their trajectory. They're going to have 2 attempts with the bombs by going to the Icarus 1. But Benedict Wong's character, Trey, just like gets like a calculation wrong or whatever. And he forgets to re-angle the heat shield that we were talking about. And it just like... is that when they lose the garden?
Yeah, so it all happens kind of at once, doesn't it?
Yeah.
So they lose certain parts of the ship aren't working properly at that point. So they have to send 2 people out to go and fix it.
Yeah. Yeah, it's... I didn't understand how that, but the heat shield itself got damaged. Some of the panels of the heat shield.
So they can't re-angle it because, there's a problem. There's some sort of problem on the ship. That's what we know.
Yeah.
So it turns out, the commander of the ship and Cillian Murphy go out to try and fix this problem. And that's when you see the amazing spacesuits they've got as well.
Yeah, really iconic gold, huge spacesuits.
Yeah. And they're practical, but they're so science fiction as well.
Yeah.
Because the iconography of those, like the big gold, like you say, they're gold, they're chunky. They look like, metal workers have those visors.
Yep.
They've got like a tiny little visor to see out of.
Yeah.
They're a little bit sort of hexagonal almost. There's lots of different angles to them, and it just seems a bit unnatural. But
they reminded me of, I think it's The Fifth Element. The characters in The Fifth Element that are like the kind of the stormtrooper group. They're a bit like hippos, but they've got like metallic headgear that goes over the top of it. That's kind of the shape of these suits in Sunshine. So they kind of reminded me of that. They kind of reminded me of the Krogans from Mass Effect.
Yeah, I know what you mean. Yeah,
when they've got like their helmets up as well, just that kind of like hunched over, pinched at the front for the visor, that look. But it is its own thing because also the gold, the kind of golden foil covering, presumably because it's the most reflective, I guess.
Yeah, so if they do get hit by anything, it will sort of help.
Yeah,
them, apparently.
But also, it's just part of the whole color palette of the film, which is just like black, white, and gold, basically.
Yeah.
It's kind of just got that sunshiny element to the look, isn't it?
Hence the name as well.
Yeah. So they go out, the 2 of them go out, and the captain ends up sacrificing himself, doesn't he?
He gets engulfed in this sunbeam, which is a weird thing to say as well, because it is a sunbeam.
Yeah.
So he gets engulfed, and then what the psychiatrist character is saying to him at that point is he just wants to know, what can you see?
Yeah.
And he gets really passionate about it. He keeps just saying, what can you see? What is there? What is it? What do you feel?
Yeah. So out of the Icarus 2 crew, they are the 2, the psych officer and the captain are the 2 that are getting a little bit obsessed with staring at the sun and getting closer to the sun. So yeah, the captain, like you said, it's like there's no time for him to get back, but also maybe if he did turn and run and like use his jets or whatever, because Cillian Murphy's telling him, you got to come, you can make it. He's making no effort. Once the panels are all fixed, he's like just looking out at the wave of fire basically that's coming towards him, and he's accepted it, hasn't he? He wants to be taken in by it. And yeah, like you said, the psych officer's like, I don't know, jealous maybe, like on the ship.
Yeah, he just wants to know, doesn't he? He wants to know what the feeling is. What do you see when you look that deep into the sun? I mean, you probably just go blind and your eyeballs melt, but he's looking at it from a different sort of perspective, like a spiritual perspective potentially.
Yeah.
Because it's got lots of spirituality to this film as well, depending on your read of it, I would imagine.
Yeah. It is a kind of a spiritual experience that he's having, and like I said, that kind of builds up to the end. So let's talk about where they get to and what happens when they get to the Icarus One. So they go off course. They sort that out. They do fix the issue with the heat shield. Captain's dead, but on with the mission. We can still do it.
Yeah. They've got oxygen problems though as well.
Oh yeah.
And they do they mention someone's going to pull the short straw later on.
Yeah.
Because they've only got a limited amount that they've got, and if they want to get back with everyone, there's too many people on board now for the oxygen levels to last.
Does that become an additional kind of an additional reason to go to the Icarus One, because the main plan becomes we can get some of the resources. We can salvage the plant life from the Icarus One mission, which will allow us to produce our own oxygen again.
Yeah, so it's got a double reward. So you could get the other nuclear missile, whatever it is. So they've got the other potential bomb. They've got the oxygen, so there's more reason to go there. But it's the guy takes over who wants to make that decision as well. This guy called Harvey.
Oh yeah. So he's a dick.
Yeah. So you know who his namesake is?
No, who? So
apparently Alex Garland said this when he was promoting Annihilation in one of his interviews, and he's talking about Sunshine when they made it, and he says so the character of Harvey was actually named after Harvey Weinstein.
Oh right, okay.
But that's why his character's sort of rude and snappy, and they thought it was a bit like Harvey Weinstein. And also Danny Boyle wanted to have that as the character because he thought it was like a fun homage to him, and he was referencing the difficulty he had handling the US release of Trainspotting.
Oh yeah.
So he'd already had this relationship with Harvey Weinstein. So he was like, we're just gonna name our character who's a bit of a dick, Harvey, in this. So
at that time in 2007, the only experience they had with him was the worst opinion they had was he's a bit of a dick. Right, okay. Right. Yeah. And he'd certainly proved to be quite a bit of a dick.
Yeah. As is this guy in this.
Yeah. So he's a real, he's a sort of snivelling little shit, and he's a coward.
He's your Hans character from Frau Mond.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, the one who's kind of like so in the love triangle in Frau Mond.
Oh yeah, the one who loses it.
Yeah, so he's losing it already. You can see that. He wants to get home, obviously. He's not thinking about the mission as much.
Yeah.
And you see him get more and more desperate when they get onto the Icarus One.
Yeah, so Icarus One goes well. There's plant life there. Well, it's all very weird because there's dust everywhere. Which one character comments saying something like 80% of dust is human skin. It's like, why are you saying that, mate?
Yeah. Why have they've shed a lot of skin?
No, there's a lot of dust there. And it's a bit of a ghost ship, but the plant room is like a jungle. It's thriving.
Yeah.
So that's great news. Although I was very unclear on how they were going to take it with them. But that doesn't really matter because everything goes wrong immediately after that, right?
Yeah, pretty much.
So they're docked and then something happens and we don't know what, but it rips the airlock off the Icarus One and our guys are stranded on there.
Yeah. So that's when it all sort of kicks off again. There's another malfunction. Just when you think everything's okay, it's another false victory. Some shit's going down. But they'd also discovered the rest of the crew, haven't they?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. They're sitting in the Icarus One's equivalent observation room, aren't they?
And they're all sort of hugging each other in a big circle. And they've obviously just turned the percentage up as to how much of the sun they can see.
Yeah.
And they've just burnt up into these big sort of dust mounds.
So that's kind of the fate that was probably awaiting the crew of the Icarus 2. Is that what we kind of read into that? Certainly the psych officer, what's his name? Searle? Is that his name?
Yeah.
certainly Searle and the captain, they were going down that road, weren't they? And presumably things could have ended the same way for the Icarus 2 if they had never encountered the Icarus 1. Maybe. That's
kind of how it looks from the outside, doesn't it?
because I guess the other scenario is, and what's going to happen is they're going to meet the captain who has survived on Icarus 1.
So this is the guy
he's
called,
crazy.
so he's called Pinbacker.
Pinbacker, yeah. So I guess the other scenario is, or one way of looking at the film is, Pinbacker is crazy on his own, and he always was going to be. And he comes and he attacks the Icarus 2. But the other way of looking at it is, well, that the same thing could have happened to the Icarus 2 because we've already got characters who are becoming obsessed with staring at the sun, even though it's causing their skin to peel. And
Yeah.
so that's left open for interpretation. There's no
And it's kind of like
yeah.
what it looks like happened to the Icarus 1 is they all started having these thoughts about what's going on and whether they should even try and save humanity. That's kind of what it boils down to, doesn't it?
Certainly for Pinbacker, yeah.
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 And so Pinbacker's kind of like this shadowy figure who we think is dead from the start. But we've seen him in video transmissions because he's in the distress call.
Yeah.
And he's saying something crazy. And he's already burnt by that point. He looks like, we don't know why he's burnt.
Yeah.
But that's the initial visual you have of his character.
Yeah. And that's the clearest visual we ever get of the character because the whole second half of the film, it's Mark Strong playing him. Great actor. He's great in this. He's very good at being very intimidating and scary. And yeah, he's just sort of half seen, isn't he? Even when you do get a shot that looks directly at him, it's shaky and blurred and distorted. So you never just get a shot of Pinbacker, but it's clear that he's rotting away from like burnt flesh, isn't he?
Yeah, and it's like, how is he still alive?
Yeah, yeah.
And so Pinbacker, it turns out, is still alive.
Yeah.
We find this out a little bit later throughout the film. But going back to the airlock quickly.
Oh, we need
We need to get him out the airlock.
It's the best scene in the film, I think.
It's really intense.
Yeah.
I think you've got a soft spot for any space film where this kind of thing happens.
Where they have to go out in space.
Yeah, because you said the same thing about Europa Report.
Yeah, that's the best bit of that.
Yeah.
So the plan is that we have to save Kappa. He's the special boy.
Yeah.
We love him.
Harvey's like, no,
Oh, yeah,
you can't
Harvey
save
loses
him.
it.
You've got to save me.
Yeah.
I'm in charge. And then Chris Evans is not so much of a dick at this point. He's like, no, we're expendable.
Yeah, he really manages to talk Harvey down. I was surprised
Yeah.
there. I thought we were going to have to get violent with Harvey. But yeah, Harvey comes around. They've got this insane scheme Kappa's got the lone spacesuit and he's going to launch himself to the other airlock. And the other two guys are just wrapping themselves in like the insulation foil and they're going to hold on to him and hope for the best.
Yeah.
And it's mad.
It's ropey, isn't it?
Yeah, but it's great.
Yes, so the psychiatrist guy, so Searle has to stay in order to manually get them out. So they go firing through, manage to get back onto the spaceship, but then Harvey hits something on the way in, and then his body goes flying out into the abyss through all the wreckage of the blown up airlock.
Horrifying. And he even pulls the insulation off his face, so we get a shot of like seeing his face frosting over and his eyeballs like freezing up.
Oh, it's great.
It's grisly. And he smashes in something in his arm because his whole body freezes by this point. And his arm shatters like the T-1000.
And it's interesting the similarity between that and the bodies which have burnt up and become dust.
Yeah.
So it's kind of that same thing again, like being broken down to your like tiniest parts.
Yeah, yeah.
And so Searle ends up staying there. Chris Evans' character and Cillian Murphy are back on the ship. They turn out to be okay. The insulation has worked. But Searle goes back to the observation room on the Icarus 1 and puts the percentage up and just stares into the sun and dies.
Yeah. He's just very content, isn't he, at that point? It's what he wanted. And by this point in the film, I think in his own mind, he's still working on the mission, but he's very quick to be like, I'll be the one who stays behind. Don't worry about it. Like he's seeing a way through this to end his own life sitting there staring at the sun. And it's kind of like, and that's why I think there is the hint there that he could have completely lost it in the way Pinbacker has, right? Because he's jumping on the opportunity to die in this really weird way, and he'd obviously been having some weird thoughts about that he hadn't expressed to the crew before, and now this opportunity comes up through tragic circumstances, and he's the one that's like, I'll stay behind, don't worry about it.
The fact that he's starting to look like Pinbacker as well, with the burnt skin.
Yeah, this is where he's peeling,
Yeah, so it's all those similarities between those two characters. So both of them have had some sort of spiritual experience with the sun. They're sort of looking at it, and they're obviously thinking about the weight of the mission and saving mankind and all this kind of stuff. And then, is mankind worth saving? And all this kind of deep thinking must be going on with those two characters.
Yeah.
And Searle decides the only way to do it is just to give up. And then Pinback is kind of saying the same thing, but he believes he's talking to God, doesn't he?
Yeah, Pinbacker's hard to follow because he talks not quite gibberish, but he's talking some mad shit.
Yeah.
He's really lost it. But he thinks he's been up there. He thinks he's been having a conversation with God, and God's told him to bring everyone up to heaven with them, i.e., let them all die. Yeah. Right? Is that the kind of
that's what it sounds like. Because he wants to sabotage the mission. And that's what it turns out to be. So it turns out that Pinbacker is the one who did the airlock, and he starts sabotaging the ship. Everyone else thinks it's poor old Benedict Wong.
Yeah.
Who was a high probability of suicide, according to Searle. And so they all decide, right, we've got to kill Benedict Wong. Because we're running out of oxygen. And he's obviously the one who did the sabotage
the ship.
Yeah. He's a risk.
Yeah.
So Chris Evans marches over there into the Earth room, which we haven't even talked about.
Well, wait, before that, they have another vote on things, don't they? So Chris Evans, he's kind of leading it, but he's like, it's got to be unanimous vote only. And then Rose Byrne won't go for it. Cassie won't go for it.
No, she's having none of it.
But then he's just like, well, whatever, I'm going to go and kill him.
And Cillian Murphy's just like, well, I have to. It's the thing that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah,
it's getting pretty brutal at this point. But what I liked was that they are all... It is still mission focused. They're getting pretty pushed to the edge of savagery, but the focus is they're still being rational. These characters, Searle notwithstanding, who's now burnt to a crisp, the rest of the characters are still broadly rational. They're still calculating what they have to do just to get to the sun and launch the bomb. And if that means I'm going to go and get a scalpel and slice Benedict Wong up, that's fine. I'll just do it.
Yeah. So he marches over there, and then Benedict Wong is already dead.
Yeah.
So what did you think of this? Did you think he committed suicide, or did you think that Pinbacker had killed him?
Pinbacker did it. Oh. Trey's dosed up to the eyeballs. They say
that. Yeah.
He can barely stand.
But then why would Pinbacker go and kill him? And why would he kill him in such a way that makes it look like he's killed himself?
Covering his tracks at this point. Yeah.
Who knows? It's open to interpretation.
It is open to interpretation because it is a very visible suicide. He's cut himself down the wrists, and then he's just sitting there in his own blood. And they also make it so there's 2 scalpels missing, don't they? Yeah. Chris Evans goes to take one from the drawer, and you see that 2 already got. Well, one's gone, and then he takes another one, leaving 2 missing. Oh no, 2 are missing. Yeah. Because Benedict Wong might have got one, and Pinbacker's got one. But also, I don't know, because there's one in the room with Trey, isn't there? Yeah. And then Pinbacker's later going to use one to stab. So he would need to anyway. Maybe. I don't know. I quite like the fact it's open to interpretation. Yeah, of course. But yeah, so he was in the Earth room. Yeah. Which is the only sort of place they have which is simulating Earth. Yeah, it's like a holodeck, but a bit simpler. Yeah, so it's kind of, you see it in Ad Astra, don't you? They've got those kind of rooms. They do the same concept. What do they? Can you remember what they call it? It's like it's like a relaxation room or something. Yeah. They don't call it that quite, I don't think, but it's like it's a therapy tool in Ad Astra, and it's used in a similar way in Sunshine, isn't it? Yeah, because the therapy aspects of this, they keep saying so Searle beforehand was recommending people to have time in the Earth room, you've got to have 3 sessions in the Earth room for an hour, and that's what I prescribe. Yeah. So he's prescribing stuff like that for their mental health. Yeah.
So this idea that when you're in space for that long, the impact it has on your like psyche is pretty intense. So you've got to have things like that to ground you and to sort of make you think why you're there, especially with a mission like this, where your whole missions is to save the planet.
Yeah.
So you've got to kind of keep it together.
Is insane.
Yeah. I mean, astronauts have it bad as it is going
Yeah.
up into space and trying to get back.
Yeah, so that kind of like that concern for the psychological welfare of the astronauts is already built into the mission. And that's whether people on Earth know about the effect of just being that near the sun or not. And I would say they somewhat are because of the nature of the observation room.
Yeah.
It's so unusual for it to even exist. That says something about what they think people are going to want to do on the ship. You know, other than anything else, it's clear it means something.
Yeah.
And yeah, also they've got this Earth room because they know people are going to lose it and they're going to need to spend time in like a simulation of Earth just to keep their head together.
Pinbacker clearly didn't go to the Earth room very much then.
Not a fan of the Earth room, no.
No.
A fan of the observation tech. The rest of the film is just pure psychedelic, violent, Danny Boyle editing madness, right?
Yeah.
He's Pinbacker's just stalking everyone on the ship. Kappa's desperately trying to just get to the bomb and launch it. Pinbacker's killing everyone. He kills... I want to talk about how Michelle Yeoh dies.
Oh, that is really something, isn't it?
It's very sad because earlier she's the one that's just like brokenhearted about the destruction of the garden because it's that's her role. She's like the biologist, and she finds like a remnant. Yeah, she finds like it's like the little Wall-E sprout. She finds a little, you know, 2-leaf
She's
clover.
so
kind of
happy
thing.
she's finally found it. Well, she's so happy she's found something.
Yeah,
And amidst all of this burnt vegetation.
because she's kind of losing it as well at this point.
Yeah.
I think as soon as her garden goes up in flames, she's lost it a little bit. And as she's doing that, Pinbacker stabs her in the back with a scalpel, right? And it's brutal.
You don't expect it as well. It just comes out of nowhere.
Yeah. But what I found interesting was he, I think, then positions her body to be like sitting cross-legged. Because that's how we see her later, right?
I wasn't sure if she got herself into that position, but that would be more interesting if Pinbacker's done that deliberately.
Yeah, because it made me wonder about his crew on the Icarus One. Did they all go insane and go and sit together in the observation room hugging and then burn up?
Yeah.
Or did he kill them and then put them there and then burn them up?
That's a really good observation. Oh, wow. That's completely flipped it for me. That's brilliant.
So
I prefer that reading of it.
Right.
It makes it more interesting for me.
It's definitely not clear. None of it's clear.
And it makes it more... Because that's a kind of a serial killer's thing,
I've watched a lot of Hannibal. I know a positioned corpse.
Yeah. Oh, that's really cool.
Yeah, so that was my take when you see Michelle Yeoh kind of like sitting there cross-legged, like. But yeah, it's not revealed. You don't know.
So, interesting fact about Michelle Yeoh in this film.
Yeah.
Danny Boyle was very impressed with her audition and said, you can be any part you want in this film. And that's the part she chose, the biologist.
Oh, that's cool. What part would you, if you could change her to one other character, what role would you give Michelle Yeoh?
Chris Evans.
Yeah?
Yeah.
I'd give her Pinbacker.
Pinbacker, that'd be great. So Chris Evans dies in quite a tragic way as well, doesn't he?
Yeah.
It's like Pinbacker tries to mess with the coolant system.
Yeah, the coolant system's a really nice concept. It's like the computer, it's a massive computer, which is constantly overheating, basically. So it lives in liquid to keep it cool.
So he's diving in this liquid, which is freezing from the looks of it. And he keeps having to dive in and try and fix it. And all whilst this is going on, Cillian Murphy's trapped in another airlock.
Yeah.
It's all kicking off. And then...
And Cassie's just like being stalked around the ship.
I got really confused what happened to Cassie. She just disappeared.
Very confused. I wasn't... So what happens is, Chris Evans is crushed as he's fixing the computers. Michelle Yeoh's dead. And Cassie and Pinbacker just disappear from the film for a few minutes. It's very confusing because the editing is insane at this point. It's like hectic and frenetic. It's very hard to know what's going on.
And the fact they don't show Pinbacker as well, like you said earlier, it's so good. It's like like a heat wave.
Yes.
So you can't see the whole time. It's kind of like you almost see it.
Like a
it's
mirage
blurry.
around him.
Yeah. Which adds to his sort of devilish look.
He's monstrous, isn't he?
And he's very much like Sam Neill in Event Horizon.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
He's
definitely.
basically that character for this film.
Yeah. So what actually does happen, and it's more clear by the end of the film, but as it was happening, I was very confused. The bomb is its own area, and we've been inside the bomb earlier in the film, but it wasn't really clear that we were. The bomb has its own like lab in it, which is Cillian Murphy's little home where he does his work, and it's also going to be detached from the ship and launched into the sun, and it is. Cillian Murphy manages to get that done manually, and then he gets inside the bomb and he's going to like pilot it down like Dr. Strangelove, you know? Like,
exactly. And the bomb's like I said, they say it's about the size of Manhattan. So
right.
It's a big surface area. And you get this weird trippy scene where they're on the top of this cube.
The bomb itself is the cube, I think.
Yeah.
But just to be clear, he goes inside the bomb, and that's where Pinbacker and Cassie have ended up.
Yeah.
And it's not super clear how and when, but when you look back and you realise that we've already been in the bomb, it is an area of the ship that's accessible. It makes more sense they've ended up there.
Yeah. He dives into the ship as well, doesn't he? He jumps off of the other ship, and you think he's saving himself, but really he's jumping onto the bomb.
Because he's got to detach it manually. He separates it and then is floating through space as it's separating, and then gets inside the bomb half. Which presumably is like, he's rigged that up, as in that's not what was supposed to happen. I'm guessing someone wasn't even supposed to be on board, and you would just detach it remotely from the ship and then fly back the other way. And so you're talking about the geography of it. They're on a big cube, which I think is the bomb, but it appears to have its own centre of gravity. Is that because of all of the nuclear material is having some sort of effect?
They do this weird sort of like super wide screen effect, don't they? And they like elongate all of the characters and stuff like that in certain shots. It's really trippy.
Yeah. Pinbacker appears to throw them off the edge of the edge of the cube, like a metal cliff. And they fall and they fall and they fall, and then they just sort of stop falling, and they're kind of in the middle of that plane of the cube, and they're just sort of standing there, and Pinbacker's still up at the top, and they've gone 90 degrees, but they're still standing.
Yeah. So weird. But I mean, it works and it looks cool.
Yeah.
Which is always my primary thing in sci-fi films. It's got to look cool.
And it adds to the psychedelic experience of the film that's been building up the whole time. It's kind of got, it's working on a bit of like internal dream logic, isn't it? But I also assume it's working on some scientific logic, because Brian Cox was working on it. I don't know if he said something about that, but I sort of trust that there's some thinking there.
Yeah.
Cassie, there's not much time. I need to know. Where is he? Is he here?
For 7 years, I spoke with God. He told me to take us all to heaven.
Wait, you know what we didn't talk about? Another great moment, because Pinbacker is holding Kappa over the edge, and then Cassie kind of runs up and just runs into them, kind of. But they rip his skin off his arm.
Oh, God, that scene. Oh.
Danny Boyle's violence is amazing, because he doesn't use... Like, you would never say that he's a director of violent movies, but he's also capable of doing the most disturbing physical violence in his films. Like, he knows the impact, I think, of seeing something shocking. Have you seen 127 Hours?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
We all know the scene.
Extreme.
And that's not... I don't know if you would call that a violent film. It's not even
violent. It's got
violence.
violent moments, and that's what he does. It adds to the tension, because all this tension is moving towards something.
Yeah.
And then he'll like do a bit of icing on the cake, and then have something quite a violent, shocking moment in there.
Yeah.
To just sort of like draw attention to it.
But it's also, it's violently realised on screen. I think that's what he's so good at. When something violent is going to happen in his film, It is edited in a shocking way. It sounds horrible. You can feel the crunching of the bone or the ripping of the skin. It's very visceral.
Yeah.
It's like kind of the way Wes Craven deals with horror. He wants you to feel it and he wants you to be upset by it. I think Danny Boyle understands the same thing. It's like, I'm gonna really hit you with this violence with all of the tools I have filmically behind me, and it's gonna feel awful.
And that's exactly what it does.
Yeah. So they rip his skin off, and it's really cool and horrible.
So
they
have
deglove
that,
him.
and then after that, they've got this quite nice moment. So the moment when Cillian Murphy is in the bomb, and he's setting it all off, and he's just about, so he's going to be inside this new star as it begins, and the two sides of the cube, whatever he's in, suddenly sort of leave a little gap for him, and he's right in between them before it all goes off.
Yeah, but one of them's like a wave of flame, isn't it?
Yeah.
And then I'm not really sure what the other wave behind him was, but
I think it must be the two bits meeting.
Yeah, and he's just sitting in the middle.
Yeah, and there's like a definite moment where he's just got his hand out and it's burning, but he's having that moment of like, this is it. I'm going to be part of this. We're going to save humanity.
Yeah.
And it's really powerful.
Yeah.
And then it's all going to happen. So he said earlier in the film, in his video message, if we get this done, what will happen is 8 minutes from the time we do it, it will be sunny on Earth. It will be a little bit brighter that day.
Yeah.
So he goes in, this explosion happens, and then we cut to Earth. So when we see Earth, we see this winter, this solar winter. Everything's covered in snow and ice.
Yeah.
There's a family playing, and then his sister's there looking at a video message from
Oh,
him.
of course, yeah. She's got like an iPad.
Yeah. Like you see why they were on that mission at that point.
Yeah.
Climate change has affected them so much that it's all winter. And you see it's Australia as well.
Oh yeah, great reveal. It's like Planet of the Apes, isn't it? Yeah.
This cold winter place is actually Australia. You see the Sydney Opera House.
But does it not snow in... Do they not get snow? I mean, it's cold in Australia when it's summer over here, right? I've never been,
That was
but...
like extreme. It's all iced over, isn't it?
Fair.
Yeah. And then it's suddenly this ray of sunshine comes along, and then everything's right with the world.
Yeah.
It's a really nice way to end it.
Yeah.
So, Danny Boyle said he won't do another sci-fi film after this.
Yes, he will.
He was like, this took it out of me too much. He said he was like completely exhausted, but he wasn't just exhausted physically. He was exhausted spiritually by doing this. So there was a article in The Guardian where Kermode was sort of doing a review. And he said, so Danny Boyle was talking about it. He said he's become more spiritual working on Sunshine. More commercial sci-fi films like Event Horizon, Alien, they tend to go to hell in space. But maybe it's more ambitious to aim to go to heaven. So it's the idea that this is kind of like them going to heaven in some ways.
That's a very interesting thing for him to say, given that, given just how horrible the events of the film are,
Yeah.
What's his view of heaven?
But it's kind of like they're trying, see, I couldn't quite get this either. But it isn't this horrible Event Horizon place where it's like a demon dimension kind of what's going on in this. And it's not like this stalk and kill film, really. It's about these people trying to save humanity.
Yeah, I agree.
And they're going closer to the light. And it's all that stuff you were talking about previously with the absence of light, and they're bringing the light. And yeah, I'm sure a lot of this is going right over my head.
I like that, and that does make some sense. And I like the fact that the kind of the four that are left alive in the end sequence are so mission focused, and I guess that kind of fits into this idea of there is a bit of purity to those characters, purity of mission, and there's some nobility to it. But how do you slot Pinbacker into that ideology, and what do you do with Searle and the captain, who, I don't know, the captain does stay focused on the mission. He fixes those panels, and that's for the good of all of humanity that he's done that, and then he kind of gets rewarded. Maybe does that kind of help fit it into that ideology that him and Searle, they both sacrifice themselves in a way successfully to save the mission. Searle saves Capo, the captain saves the whole ship, and then it's like a reward to then have that experience with the sun that they seem to want, and they allow themselves that.
I think that's another interesting read of the film, isn't it?
Yeah.
And then Pinbacker in that case would be the sort of the antithesis of that.
Yeah.
So he is the character who all of the stuff he's doing, he's manipulated the idea of what's going on into his own sort of motives, and he's just gone crazy by thinking about
I
this.
don't see him as having the same religious. I'm kind of changing my opinion now a little bit and thinking that Pinbacker hasn't quite had the same religious experience that we saw Searle and the captain having, because they sacrifice themselves for the greater good and then they give themselves over to the light. Pinbacker just lost it,
but he sees himself more as a prophet.
Yeah.
So he's the one who feels like he's saving everybody else by giving them this experience of dying in the sun.
Right.
So it's that kind of thing. But also, so Alex Garland's an atheist as well.
Yeah.
And then Danny Boyle is like
Danny Boyle,
quite
like
religious.
grew up Catholic, didn't he?
Yeah. So it's this juxtaposition, but then both of these, like the director and the writer, they agreed on the film and they agreed they were getting what they were getting from it. So it's interesting seeing this meeting of different core beliefs in this film, and I'm sure that affects how you read it.
How's this for a kind of made up alternate plot? The rest of Pinbacker's crew all had that religious experience that Searle and the captain have, and they do give themselves over voluntarily. Pinbacker didn't have the same experience, and it drove him crazy, and he becomes this false prophet who's obsessed with the idea of it because he heard his colleagues talking about it. He understands what they were going through, but he didn't feel the same way. So he spent years trying to become this religious figure and have this experience, this almighty religious profound experience they were talking about, and all it's done is driven him increasingly mad, and he's become this insane false prophet, and he takes it out on the Icarus 2 crew.
I mean, I would buy that one as well. I mean, it's good because you don't know what's happened on the Icarus 1. You don't know what the story is there.
Yeah.
And that's part of the joy of it, because both those interpretations you've told me just now are brilliant.
Yeah.
And I would enjoy either of them.
Yeah, but they don't. None of them really gel. They can't all be the right answer, and that is what makes it such a good film. Stuff is open to interpretation. We don't know how Michelle Yeoh ended up sitting cross-legged. All of that stuff. It's I love it. I love this film.
But they saved the planet, and they've saved the planet. They sacrificed themselves on this mission. And the other film we're going to talk about is a similar sort of thing.
Yeah.
So let's start talking about Wandering Earth.
The question remains, now what should we do?
All countries and regions around the world will mobilize all resources to construct 10,000
建造1万座行星发动机。
What did you think of this film, first off?
I guess I liked it.
You texted me when you were watching it, and you said, this is bonkers.
It really is bonkers.
That's what I love about it, though.
Yeah. And
it's mad.
I was laughing out loud at some points of it that were not comedic in any way.
Yeah.
But yeah, definitely when the credits were rolling, I was like, all right.
That was fun.
Good for you. It is fun. It is fun. But it's mad.
It's such a crazy idea.
Yeah. Well, yes. And that's the thing. It is a completely insane plot idea. And where can you go with that other than more craziness?
Yeah. But apparently I read something that there was someone in America who had an idea to make a ship as big as the Earth.
Okay.
And then travel rich people over there and then find another solar system and that kind of stuff. So there's been...
Sorry, this is in real life?
In real life.
Right, okay.
People have...
anyone can have that idea.
People have thought about this kind of stuff. But I don't think I'd ever thought of this idea in my life. So the main premise of this film is they take the Earth, the sun's dying...
The sun's expanding.
The sun's expanding, so it's getting...
But that is how a sun dies as well, isn't it? That would be a red dwarf or a white dwarf. They get very big and then they collapse.
So it's causing calamity on Earth.
Yeah.
So again, they've got problems with climate change, And to solve these problems, they go, right, what are we going to do? We're going to move the Earth to a new solar system. We're going to put loads of rockets all over it. And that's what we're going to do. This is a great sci-fi concept.
It is.
I bloody love it.
Yeah. Well, it's a sci-fi concept that I really like, which is the idea of the arc ship, which is what Silent Running does it on a very small scale. That's just a few forests. There's a TV miniseries called Ascension. Did you watch that a few years ago? That was disappointing because, spoilers for that, the twist is it's not really an arc ship. It's kind of a simulation or whatever, which is a shame because like the first episode of that is the best representation of an arc ship or a generation ship that I've ever seen, like on TV. It was really good. I guess Battlestar Galactica is that concept in a way. The fleet is an arc. But in this film, the whole planet is the arc and we're just going to move it.
Yeah.
And it's insane.
It's insane.
Why wouldn't they just build a load of spaceships?
No, we're going to it's just more cost effective. We'll just take the whole planet with us.
Yeah.
And then we're going to, so first off, they must have stopped the rotation of the Earth.
Yes. Well, there's two different types of engines. There are propulsion engines. There's 10,000 engines just built on Earth.
And they're massive, these things.
Like half or whatever. Some of them are propulsion engines and some of them are called torque engines. And the torque engines are built around the equator. And their job is to... they stop.
You can't even say it.
It's mad. They stop the Earth's rotation and then the propulsion engines blast it off into space out of its orbit.
Amazing.
But stopping the rotations causes tsunamis because the tide is ruined by doing that. The tsunamis wipe out all life on Earth, but they've already built underground cities where a percentage, not all of the population, are going to survive.
They do like a lottery thing to get them under there. Most people consider this to be like China's first sort of big major sci-fi film.
Okay.
What do you think about that?
Weird one to come in with.
Yeah. I mean, it's like, obviously there have been sci-fi films coming from China, but this is like
this is a blockbuster.
Yeah,
this is massive.
Blockbuster.
Yeah. So let's talk about, we mentioned how well it did. I've forgotten the budget, but it made like more than 10 times its budget
so
at the
it was
box office.
50 million. So I think it cost like 50 million maybe. And then it brought in like, how much did it was like?
Like nearly $700 million. And
that's just in China.
I don't know. Is it?
I think so.
Probably because it's outside of China. It's a Netflix film.
Yeah.
So
Netflix bought it after the massive success it had in China.
So that's probably China, and I think there's shared markets with other Eastern countries.
Yeah.
But yeah, you're right. That's just that theatrical release on that side of the world, and then Netflix have distributed it around the rest of the world.
And given it sort of a wider audience as well.
And it was quite a big hit on Netflix, wasn't it? Or maybe it's safer to say it was very well promoted. It's hard to say what's a hit on Netflix.
Yeah, it's tricky, isn't it? Because obviously sometimes Eastern and Western ideologies don't quite mix when you're watching films. So that might have tainted some of the critics with this one.
Right.
Potentially. I don't know for definite.
But also it's bonkers.
It is bonkers. So this film as well, the Chinese movie industry, they had a few different directors in mind. And they tried to get in people like James Cameron.
Yeah, good luck. Like
Luc
James
Besson.
Cameron's going to touch this story. Luc Besson would have done this so well.
Yeah, definitely. It's definitely up his sort of like street, isn't it?
Yeah. He would do a fun version of this.
But yeah, so in the end they got Frank Guo.
Yeah, never heard of him.
No,
or her.
This is his first time directing.
Oh, right. Wow.
Yeah. So just, here you go. Here's this project.
Lovely.
And he did a lot of work to try and sort of get it together beforehand.
What do you mean?
So he did like, what did he do? So him and his colleagues, they wrote an outline of 250,000 words. Way above
that's
normal.
like a novel.
Way above normal. No one's got that much in-depth like stuff beforehand for the film. Yeah. So they wrote all that sort of stuff about sort of like the characters and all this kind of stuff and the storyline. And they spent 6 months together working day and night, writing and redrafting this sort of manuscript. So each character, you see, it has a very detailed background and stories about them. So he went all out. Just crazy amounts of extra stuff.
That's interesting because, I don't know, like, I think all of the characters are pretty two-dimensional in this, right?
Yeah, but they're not, I mean, they must know some of their backstories. But yeah, you're right. They are sort of, they're all just going from A to B.
Yeah.
And you get bits of background, but none of it's fleshed out terribly well.
Like, who would you say is the main character? It's either the father on the space station or the son on Earth, right?
I would say the father's the B story.
Yeah.
And then the A story is the son.
The son goes through zero character development in this film. Like,
he's pissy at the beginning and he's pissy at the end.
Yeah.
Well, actually, at the very, very end, he's all right.
I guess.
Like, he's the big hot shot.
He's cocky and brash throughout.
But this was based on a novel as well.
Yeah.
Which
by the same guy who wrote The Three-Body Problem, which I haven't read, but I really, really want to read. It's supposed to be incredible. Have you heard of that one?
So what happens to that one?
I don't know. But it's
a good one.
Part one of a trilogy, and it's a big like sci-fi epic, and it's really well reviewed. But this is quite small. This is based on quite a short story, I think. It's not like one of his big works.
It's a novella, isn't it?
Yeah. But yeah, he's quite a big name in China in sci-fi fiction, literary wise anyway.
The author had said about his book, he said it's about, he wrote it because humanity is a selfish civilization and that's what will make them survive an environmental disaster or an alien invasion. And that's kind of what he was going for in the book. Because we are fundamentally selfish, we will find a way to save ourselves.
Yeah.
But that's not what comes across in the film, is it?
No. And it's an interesting, it's just an interesting choice of word there, selfish. Maybe he said that in Chinese and that's translated. Like, we are self-preserving, like, biologically, we're built for that. You know, we have these instincts not to touch something hot. That's self-preservation. Those instincts build out into our entire psyches. And I agree with him on that point. That is what will save us from, hopefully, save us from ecological disaster, and it would save us from, or it'd be our best bet against an alien invasion in real life, you know?
Because this film's very much about sort of like humanity uniting by the end. And that sort of like, and saving everyone by doing that.
And actually, that's one of the things that I really like about the film. There's a sense of international cooperation.
Yeah.
It's kind of represented in the worst character, which is the Chinese-Australian guy.
Tim,
who casually...
very strange.
Yeah, casually implies he's a rapist.
Yeah.
Didn't like him at all.
No.
Really was not keen on him. But
he's like a weird character in it because he's like Australian and
Chinese.
Chinese, yeah.
Beijing and Melbourne.
So he's dual heritage.
Yeah.
And everyone makes a comment about that as soon as they see him.
Well, it's like his only character trait, apart from the fact that he implies he's a racist.
He's got blonde hair, there you go.
Yeah. What do they call him? China guy? Chinese guy? Because he's making a point of saying, you know, I'm a real authentic Chinese guy. So when they're giving out nicknames, he gets called Chinese guy. But despite him being the worst character in the movie, the fact that he is half Chinese, half Australian, and he makes a point about talking about that, it represents the kind of internationalism they're going for.
Yeah.
The Earth, in the wake of this ecological crisis, has united into one government, which...
The UEG,
which I guess from a Chinese political ideology standpoint, that's preferable to be a one world government. That's what communism broadly wants to achieve, I guess. They build this space station that's kind of guiding the Earth through space, and there's a big point made about it being it's an international effort, astronauts all over, they talk with translation units. The main astronaut character's best mate is Russian, and, you know...
Yeah, so you've got like lots of different nationalities in there. Interestingly, though, there's no real Americans.
There's some Americans towards the end. One of the rescue parties.
They're quite quiet in this.
Yeah. Well, I think there might be a bit of Chinese strength propaganda. Our space program is leading the charge. We're the best. And that probably fits into where China wants to be, and actually realistically where China is, you know, economically, but kind of presenting themselves on the world stage. So coming out with a big blockbuster sci-fi film where their astronauts are the heroes and their people on the ground all unite together, all the All the proletariat working together to save the day. It all fits the ideology quite
And that's
well.
important for this as well. And it's like, you don't get films like this, do you?
No.
Where they've got where it's a massive blockbuster sci-fi film with a completely Asian cast, except for a few exceptions.
Yeah.
And it's like, it was really refreshing to see. We talk about a lot of American films on this podcast and a few British ones.
Yeah.
It's not often where we watch a foreign film, and we watched Solaris so far in this series, but we haven't watched anything else. So it's always nice to have something which has sort of risen to this level of popularity from another country.
And it would have had to get through a lot of censorship. So that's the thing about Chinese media, isn't it? It's incredibly tightly controlled. So I don't think I'm out of line to speculate on, what it might mean for China positioning itself on the world stage. I think you can't make a blockbuster film in China, I wouldn't think, without someone from the government having a look at it and making sure it is in line with all the messages we want to put out to the world.
Yeah, that would make sense, wouldn't it? So let's talk a little bit about what happens in the film then. So they're on this flying Earth, the Wandering Earth project, and they all live underground.
Yeah.
And the reason for that is because they haven't got a sun anymore. It's very, very cold outside.
Yeah.
So they're all living underground, and we start off following this, the main character, the protagonist, whose dad has gone to go and work on the space station, leading the way.
Yeah, and at the start of the film, he's just one day away from retirement.
Yeah,
what could possibly go wrong? So he's done his 15 odd year shift, 17 year, I think. And he's logging off his computer for the day or whatever, and he's going to be flying back to Earth the next day, and then everything goes wrong.
So you know that the character of the dad, he's played by a guy called Wu Jing.
Yep.
He was only supposed to be in it a little bit.
Okay.
But what happened is the director kept getting him in for extra scenes because he was the only big name attached to the film. So he kept going, can you just do this? Can you just do that? And then by the end of the film, they didn't have enough to pay him, the full amount. So what they said is can you sort of forego your pay for this? And Wu Jing was just he was so on board with the film. He was like, that's fine. What I'll do is I'll take a percentage of the money. I'll put some of my own money in.
The Alec Guinness
so he did
clause.
that. And some people speculated it was the director being a bit shady. But I mean, I assume I assume that everyone's come off pretty well after this now.
Yeah, I mean,
600 million cash.
Yeah. So, but things start to go wrong. So we are introduced to the concept of the Wandering Earth project, and then it cuts to 17 years later, and basically the entirety of the film is around something that goes wrong when they haven't even got out of the solar system. So I was quite surprised by that. Weirdly, later, I think it's at the very end of the film, they explain the timings of the project, how many hundred years of acceleration.
They mention it a bit at the beginning, but it's very quick.
Right. They really go into the detail at the end, which I quite liked it. It's quite interesting just hearing that at the end. But when we got to 17 years later, I was confused because first of all, the kids go out on the surface and it's daylight. I was like, why is it daylight? They've flown away from the sun. But we're only at Jupiter.
Yeah.
That's why it's daylight. And that's where we have a major crisis, right?
Yeah.
There's problems
Jupiter
around
is causing problems.
Yeah.
So they end up getting too close to Jupiter's gravitational pull, which is something that could have happened.
Sure. It doesn't matter in this film what could or couldn't happen because they fly the planet out into space.
It's something that really could happen. So they fly too close to the planet.
Can you imagine when we're old men, and this is happening for real, and we're just when I was young, I thought this was a far-fetched dream, but yeah. Well, here we are flying into space and living in underground cities. I'll eat my words.
So they're flying off in their planet. This is the best spaceship I've seen so far.
Yeah.
So they're flying off, and so they're getting too close to Jupiter, and the space station has found this out. And it's going into a meltdown situation. Yeah. It's everybody go to sleep. We're going in sort of low conservation mode or something.
Yeah, why? I can't remember.
Save battery power
Say
or something.
battery power, yeah.
Who knows?
Who cares?
And it turns out that that's all a bit shady, all that stuff's going on.
Yeah, the ship's computer, what did that remind you of?
How? And Wall-E.
Yeah, for me it was more Wall-E.
Looked like Wall-E, yeah.
But it doesn't have like a computerized voice. It's more like Hal. It's got an actor's voice.
Yeah.
Oh, did you watch this dubbed, by the way?
No.
I did because it was the default on Netflix.
Mine was subtitles with closed caption.
What does that mean? I know that on Netflix sometimes you get two options, English and English closed captions.
So closed captions is describing what's going on. It says who everybody says. It's like sad music.
Is that not annoying?
And then so I switched it back to normal subtitles.
Okay, right.
I noticed that about 10 minutes in.
So I don't particularly like dubbed films, but it was the default when I switched it on, so I just left it. There is a weird thing with that though, and I double checked when it was happening to compare. When we're first introduced to the Russian guy who's his mate,
the cosmonaut.
The cosmonaut. We're introduced to their like Babelfish style communication units that do the translating.
So that didn't come across properly in the subtitles.
Right. Well,
because he was suddenly speaking Russian. I assumed it was Russian.
Here, this is what's interesting. Yeah. In the dub, everybody in this film speaks English. Everybody.
Yeah.
So the Russian guy speaks English with a Russian accent. The Chinese characters speak English. The American characters, they're the best because they're speaking English, but you can see they're dubbed. So it just looks really weird. But yeah, no, I compared it. I put the original Mandarin audio on. And yeah, so the Russian character speaks Russian with Chinese subtitles?
Yeah.
Yeah. And what do you hear? You just get English subtitles over the top of it.
Yeah, so it's just two loads of English subtitles. So it was a bit, you had to listen out for it.
So either way, the English-speaking audiences don't fully appreciate what they're doing there. But the Chinese-speaking audiences do see that he's speaking Russian in that scene, I think.
But he's understanding him.
Yes, yeah. They just
so
have
again,
a
it's this sort of like idea of cooperation.
Yes.
And there's this multinational society, everyone from different cultures, backgrounds, they're all working together to sort of save the Earth. So the core part of the story revolves around a family. So you've got the dad who's living in the space station.
Yep.
You've got the son who's training to be a mechanic, who's living with his granddad and his sister.
Yeah.
So at this point, you don't know that his sister is related or anything. She just appears out of nowhere.
She appears out of nowhere, and the dad's never asking after her.
Yeah.
I thought they were cousins because part of the dialogue early, I think the girl says your dad, and then in the same conversation, the boy says our granddad.
Yeah, that's what. So that makes more sense now.
So the simplest explanation there is that they're cousins.
Yeah. But it turns out it was the granddad saved her.
Yeah.
When all these tsunamis were happening, and he was part of the rescue team, sort of saving people.
But she was a baby, and he weirdly adopts her as her granddad. Why wouldn't he just raise her, calling him dad?
He probably sees himself more as a granddad by that point.
Fine, yeah, fine.
But yeah, I do see your point with that.
No, but their relationship is confusing. Like, cousin seems like the easiest explanation because they're not boyfriend and girlfriend. When they first sort of escape together, you're thinking this is a couple.
Yeah.
But then they're treating each other like siblings, but the language doesn't fit. So by that point, I'm like, okay, they're cousins. But yeah, like you said, it's a more complicated scenario.
They kind of breezed over that a bit, but it's kind of, you just take it at face value when you're watching it. You're like, these two characters that know each other. Okay, cool, we're along for the ride.
Yeah, there's their dad in space. Yep. And their granddad on Earth.
Their granddad. I enjoyed the character of the granddad.
Yeah, he was all right.
Yeah. So they end up getting roped into this mission to put a new fuel source into one of the engines.
Yeah. It's hard to follow.
So this is all going on. They've suddenly got to go on this mission. The planet is starting to feel the effects of being too close to Jupiter.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's like the engines are failing. There's like earthquakes and things are falling down on the underground cities.
Yeah.
So it's all. I thought the underground cities were really well done as well. So you've got
they were quite cool. They're a bit Blade
holograms of in the school. They've got a school scene, and you see what it would be like outside. It's nice. It's a sunny day. It's a typical school in China. oh wait, we're underground. That's a hologram. None of this is real.
It's cool.
Yeah, very Blade Runner-y, like you said.
So they get roped into a rescue mission. Is that a bit of a communist thing as well? There's this idea that the military just takes over their vehicle and then they become part of the crew. It's like the government can at any time just sort of take over your life and you're working for the government now and we have to...
Yeah.
You're on a mission now.
It does become a bit like that, doesn't it? Because they try and get away straight away.
Yeah.
But they end up roped into this mission. And there's the anti-capitalist bit as well.
Yeah, so they slag off money.
Yes, they're looking through the old Shanghai, which is all covered in like frost and it's all just destroyed from all the solar winter that's going on. And the granddad says something like, in those days, all we worried about was money. We didn't think about anything else. And now all we think about is there's no sun and the climate change. So this film has a lot of... The climate change is the main theme of this, isn't it? Because that's the problem.
But the way they represent it is interesting from like a political viewpoint, right? Because the climate change that's happening is because the sun's expanding. It's nothing to do with anything that humans on Earth have done, which is interesting because, I mean, like China as a country has quite bad emissions, right? I don't think it's exactly leading the world in ecological matters. Yeah. So if your film was about man-made ecological disasters, how would you have a hard time making that film in China with the Chinese government? Is it easier when the ecological disaster is the sun is expanding through no fault of our own? Because this is not your typical man-made disaster ecological storyline, is it?
No.
There's no guilt on the humans, basically. I thought that was interesting.
Yeah. It's a really tricky one to get your head around again, isn't it?
Yeah.
But because then they sort of like imply that nobody worries about money now, but they do still have that sort of currency they talk about previously.
Yeah, what's the currency?
They've got like little barcodes on themselves and they sort of get scanned and they pay for stuff like that.
Yeah, which is that's like a communist dream, but it's horrible to see. Like it look, having barcodes on you, despite the really horrible historical implications of that. It just means sort of coding people up as a just a piece of product is not very nice.
Yeah, that's a strange idea, isn't it?
Mm.
But then you've got in this then, it's not so in Destination Moon we had the big leaders of industry leading the way, paying for everything. In Pharaoh and Mons, you've got the businessman leading that and sort of taking the money away from the idealists. In this film, it's all the people doing everything.
Yeah.
It's this sort of like idea of cooperation comes through a lot more, which is quite an interesting thing given the previous space films we looked at.
Yeah, it's a kind of ground up, grassroots, socialist fantasy, I guess, of how the power of ordinary people coming together and as a one society to achieve extraordinary things. And there is this one world government body, but they're a faceless organization. We hear their voice a little bit, but that's it.
Yeah, and even then they sort of the voice says, "Oh, as a member of the government, I can't say this, but as a man, I want you to save people," and that kind of thing.
Yeah. He was French. Could you tell?
No,
because on the dub he's got like a French accent.
I think by that point I was just trying to keep up with the subtitles and what's going on with all of the craziness.
Yeah.
So the space station turns out that it's not the Wandering Earth project. It's actually a project called Helios.
Yeah.
So it's got loads of embryos, and it's basically like another Ark project, isn't it?
Yeah. What was it like on the subtitles? Because in the dub, they've got thousands of embryos and millions of seeds.
Yeah.
And that's just what it says in the subtitles as well. So what kind of seeds are they? Because I just started thinking...
Pumpkin seeds.
Right, okay. I was thinking about a different kind of seed that would go with the embryos.
Okay.
And then I was just imagining what was on the ship.
Filthy.
Yeah.
But
disgusting.
Practical for this Ark, potentially.
But whatever, yeah. So it's a more...
They've got loads of different species.
Yeah.
Everything's there. Embryo, sperm.
No, they do this a little bit in... Yeah, that's the backup Ark ship. I do like that. There's two types of Ark ship happening, and the backup is put everyone from the crew on that satellite ship, put them into hibernation, and then carry on with the frozen embryos and stuff, and that's going to be the new civilization. I thought that was quite well done as well, because at the start you don't really question why the space station exists. So you accept that it's just there to...
It's their guiding light.
Which actually, on reflection, why?
Yeah,
why would they have
because the
that?
sun makes a big point of it, saying like, oh, you said you were going to be a star. You can't see any stars from the planet now.
Yeah.
Because there's no light anywhere.
Yeah. So we can see on reflection that all along that was just a cover, really, for the backup plan. And I thought... They're just very quick to switch to the backup plan, right? They're just like, oh, shit, the gravity around Jupiter. Right, that's that. Plan 2, Helios.
It just all happens very quickly, that part.
Yeah.
Even though it takes a while to happen in the film.
I don't know. Everything happens quickly. There's insane pacing in this film.
Yeah. Once something happens, it is all systems go.
Yeah.
If something goes wrong, everything goes wrong. What are we going to do? Let's breathe a little bit. And then we're going again.
It had a bit of an anime feel to it as well. The pace is just so full on. It's disaster after disaster, but you very quickly get to the next installment of how we're going to fix this disaster. And also the idea that, you know, a group of 15, 16, 17-year-olds saved the world. That feels very anime, doesn't it? Or like Final Fantasy-ish.
And I like the way they had the thermal suits rather than lots of different space suits.
Yeah.
And the fact that... they'll have to have suits in order to get around the planet now because it's so extreme and the weather is extreme. There's no, like, it's cold.
Yeah.
It's very cold.
Yeah.
So having that, I thought was another sort of nice sci-fi device.
Yeah, they look cool. And it does feel like a spacey film, doesn't it? Even though we're actually on Earth the whole time. Because of those thermal suits, they look like space suits. The environment's so hostile and kind of alien and we're flying through space.
Yeah, exactly. Everything is kicking off. I really liked how, as the Earth was getting closer, they said the atmosphere was getting sucked away by Jupiter.
Yeah.
And you've got these really crazy visuals of like this gas just coming off of the
vortex,
Earth.
Joining mid-Jupiter and Earth. Yeah.
Yeah. So you've got the character of the son and the dad, and they've got an awkward relationship.
Yeah.
The son kind of like hates the dad now because he left him, and he also found out that his dad decided to let his mum die.
Yeah, the mum was sort of terminally ill, I think, and there were a limited number of spaces in the underground cities. You do see her getting boxed up in a cardboard coffin.
Yeah.
Which I think that's not too unusual for a cremation, but there's something quite weird about seeing a character be put in a cardboard coffin.
Yeah.
It seems callous, even though I don't think it is. I think it might be fairly standard if you want to cremate someone. I don't know.
But I mean, given the sort of timelines of this, it might be because so many people die at the beginning of this film.
Yeah, there's that as well, yeah.
Like, there's millions and millions of people. There's only a few people which survive and get to live in these underground, like, chambers. Like, even just talking about it now, I'm thinking about this and I'm thinking about that. And there's lots of stuff happening in the film.
Yeah. I think we can breeze over the middle chunk, though, because they're trying to get I can't even remember what it's called, the starter unit, the thing that's going to start up the engines.
The igniter, the fuse igniter or something.
Yeah. 4,000 or so engines have been knocked out, which is almost half. Do we assume that what we're seeing, the rescue mission where they're going to reignite it, that is happening in 4,000 other places across the planet?
Yeah.
The whole journey, all the craziness that they go through.
Everybody's doing something similar.
Right, fair enough.
I think so, yeah.
They go through Shanghai. Shanghai's all frozen over. They're just trying to transport this thing. There's a really insane scene where one of the kind of army people just shoots the ignition thing.
Yeah.
Do you remember this bit?
Yeah,
Do you know
yeah.
why she did that? I was so confused. I didn't know what was going on by that point.
So she was like, so if they'd carried on, then they would die or something like that. Or someone else had... So one of them had frozen to death at that point.
Yeah, and she goes, no more deaths.
Yeah,
right?
because if they carry on, there's a high likelihood they're not going to survive. So she's like, no more deaths, we're just going to go. And they go, if I destroy this, then we can't do the mission anyway and we'll all have to go home. not thinking about the fact that they can't save the rest of the world.
That was my issue.
Yeah.
I think it was because I just come off the back of Sunshine with all the characters who stay locked into the mission. To see one of the like soldiery type characters then just kind of like pack it in. Like,
no,
people have died. I'm destroying the thing that's going to save us. But then they find another one of those things and then they carry on.
Again. And there was like, do you remember the crazy moment when someone throws up in their helmet?
Yep.
And then tries to put Tim in it?
Gives it to Tim, yep.
But then none of them get in it. They get...
Don't know. Well, I don't know. Tim's thing looked a bit dirty.
Oh, maybe he had sick in there.
I think he did, yeah.
All this craziness going on all the time.
It's like set piece after set piece, but they're tiny set pieces. They're like little 5-minute set pieces. So let's get to kind of the culmination of it. So everything goes wrong, everything's a failure, and all hope is lost. And then how they communicate that to the world.
So they have this big announcement don't they, from the UEG.
Yes. Is it from the computer? Is it
might
Moss?
be, yeah. He says, they say, there's no hope. We're sorry to see you go.
Yeah.
We're going to move on now and we're going to do this new project.
Go home and kiss your children.
Yeah.
Good luck. You've got 7 days to live as the planet slowly crumbles into Jupiter.
And everyone goes fucking mental.
Yeah.
People are shooting themselves. People are like driving in crazy ways just to get home. It's
there's rioting, looting, violence. But our nerd character that's kind of joined the crew at some point, no idea when he showed up. There's some guys in grey suits and they're just there about halfway through the film. Don't know what their deal is. But one of them's a government technical scientist.
Yeah, they
genius.
find him in the other transport vehicle.
Is that it? Oh, right, okay. And he's got a plan to, how would you describe it? What's the idea?
They're going to fire an engine into Jupiter to ignite it like a helium balloon.
Right, because it's the nitrogen from Jupiter's atmosphere.
What's the helium? No.
Helium?
Maybe I'm thinking of moon again. There's some sort of gas.
I think it's nitrogen mixing with the oxygen from Earth's atmosphere. Is it? It's something like this.
They basically want to
and it's
blow
combustible.
up Jupiter.
Yeah.
That's basically what they're going for.
Yeah.
And they go to all these big lengths to do it. They get all these people to help them and they've almost done it. And it's like, yes, finally everyone's come in. And they just miss. They're just like probably about 200 meters away from hitting Jupiter.
Yeah.
And then they have to get the dad to fly his space station, Earth's other hope, into the engine.
Oh, yeah, it's full of fuel. And he's like, I'm going to crash it.
And then this basic... so at this point, he finally becomes the star.
Yeah.
And a star.
Nice.
So he kept saying to his son when he was younger, there's lots of flashbacks to this. You can look up there and you'll see a star and it'll be me. So what I kind of expected at this point is they're going to ignite Jupiter. It'll become the sun.
Yeah.
His dad will be in the sun. And then that'll be their new star and it'll be fine.
Oh, okay. No, I wasn't expecting that.
That's what I thought was going to happen.
I was certainly expecting some more fireworks.
Yeah.
Because he just flies into it and at that point nothing happens. But then there's like an 8-minute countdown.
It's always 8 minutes. This is the other thing that I noticed.
Is it?
So like in Sunshine, they said it's 8 minutes for light to travel.
Oh, yeah.
So that's when it will be. So it will happen, and 8 minutes later, you'll have a sunny day.
Right.
8 minutes. I think it's 7 minutes in this.
Oh, okay. 7
minutes, and then they'll fly off.
It's
from the
7 minutes.
shockwave.
The shockwave's going to hit Earth. Yeah. Yes. Then there's another. The tension's still like ramped up even more because they've got to get back underground. They can't get underground. They've got to go under the engine. It's like. I mean, it's too hectic. It's mad. It's just a crazy film.
It's exciting, though. Isn't it?
Yeah.
Dad used to tell you that. Dad would be up in the sky. Just lift your head, and you'll be able to see me.
That's basically the end, right? And then
and he gets. You think the main character's died because he's out in the. There's a big again, more explosions, more crazy stuff going on.
His sister falls down.
Yep,
And he goes after her. And they
then-
fall 1,000,000 miles.
And then they get in the weird balloon things, which they've used throughout. The little balls, the little zorbing balls.
Yeah.
I mean, just describing it, there's so much. I forgot about this entire aspect of it. So it's a couple of years later, he's got a cold burn on his face from being out in the
Oh, yeah.
in the extremes of the surface. And he's suddenly this big hotshot now.
Yeah.
He's going around saying hello to everyone. Everybody's like really nice now. It's not this...
Yeah, humanity's come together. We're all one government.
Yeah,
we all love each
saved
other.
it.
Yeah.
And then it's going to take fucking ages to get to the next place.
It's going to take 2,500 years total.
Fucking hell.
Yeah.
That's a long time to be underground.
The plan, like, what's the plan? And the plan when they get there is they're going to spend like 700 years decelerating, and I don't know. I guess it's going to take a long time.
Worked it out. Come
But
on.
I was just trying to imagine the Earth just flying into another solar system and just like parking in orbit around the sun, and then
Then it gets there, and then suddenly they're in their new solar system, living their best lives.
yeah, just do it in ships, though, right?
It's not as creative, Matt.
It's so weird.
Bonkers. So in these two films, we have seen them both saving the planet in very different ways.
Yeah.
Both times the sun has been the problem.
Well, in Sunshine, we go to the sun to
Yep.
fix the problem, and in The Wandering Earth, we're getting the hell away from the sun.
We're going to find another sun.
Yeah.
We're going to find a better sun than you.
Yeah.
Also, Wandering Earth has this idea of cooperation in order to get there. So we all need to unite. And again, this sort of international space station kind of thing. You've got the idea that if humanity works together, we're going to be able to do it. So gone are the days when it's the space race that we saw previously.
Yeah.
Where everybody's competing to get there first and land on the moon and be the one who's going to fire the missiles from there.
Yeah, yeah.
In this, we're seeing from a whole other country saying, right, we're going to work together and we're going to save the planet because things are going wrong and we need to find a way out.
But you're right in what you said earlier that America is somewhat removed from the picture. They are they're part of this coalition. We see on a screen that they're one of the 5 main countries in the united government. But from a visual standpoint and from a storytelling standpoint, they are not a big thing. And it is interesting that it's a Russian guy who's his best mate. It could have easily been an American guy. I do think it's a little bit of competition. I think there's this view of humanity coming together, but something maybe about the relationship between China and America in 2019 would mean that, they would want to slightly push them to the side and say maybe they are not they're not going to be the big part of this lovely cooperative one world government because of what they're like.
And you kind of see that the multinational group of astronauts in Sunshine as well, don't we?
Yeah,
because
yeah.
it's
I like that.
all different characters, different nationalities, different backgrounds. You've got that in there.
Yeah.
So again, we're seeing this, in order to get into space, we're going to have to all work together. And that's kind of the recurring theme in these films.
Yeah. So that's all we've got time for this week. Next time on the show, we are going to be revisiting the Odyssey. We're going back to the world of Dave and Hal. We're going to watch 2010, the year we make contact, from 1984, I think. A long time between those films. And we're also going to look at Interstellar from 2014. I'm really interested to see 2010. 2010?
Yeah.
I don't know what we should call that. I don't know what it's
Same
supposed
here,
to be called.
because we've made lots of speculations about how Hal is as a character. That's a very interesting mouthful to say. So yeah, we've made lots of speculation about him as a character. I wonder if we'll find out anything more looking at 2010.
Yeah.
Yeah, and obviously Interstellar's got so many connections to 2001.
Yeah, it's compared to it a lot as well.
Yeah, it's Christopher Nolan's kind of ode to it, I would say.
Yeah. So please tune in for that. Please leave us a review, say something nice, recommend us to a friend, write us a letter, and then scan it and email it to us at journeythroughsci-fi@gmail.com.
Yes, please.
Where else can people find us?
You can find us on Twitter @Through Sci-Fi Pod. You can find us on Instagram. We're on the gram. You love it. We're on Through Sci-Fi Pod there as well. We're on Facebook. We've got a Facebook page. We're all over the place. You can find us. You can chat to us. So seek us out and we'll be there.
Thank you. Bye.